I'm Johnathan Yerby, so my presentation I'm going to be looking at something we're probably pretty familiar with because we've either taken online classes or some of us are already teaching online classes. So I'm going to be looking at some of the best practices that you might want to implement in your teaching or that you might look for your instructors to implement in your online courses. So first I want to talk about the applications for these best practices in online teaching. So this paper came from a collaborative writing assignment in one of Dr. Diaz's courses. So I wrote this with a master's student, Bonnie Brain. But so we first wanted to look at some of the applications. So this can be used all through education. So we start with the K-8, so K through 8. We kind of broke it down that way because we'll see a little bit different reasons that someone might choose to use online education in high school. But in these situations, you'll see both public and private, both free and tuition-based. So costs range from all the way free to pretty expensive. The main reason cited in several research studies that I'll have at the end is due to the flexible nature of online learning, flexible in time, flexible in location, and as we'll look into the high school, one of the additional things is flexible in what they want to learn. Same thing with college. Students really seek that flexibility in location, time, and cost. In the high school area, one of the other things that were cited that I wouldn't immediately think of when I was thinking of an online curriculum is students that want to seek extracurricular activities, want to do sports, or especially if someone's doing something like maybe they plan to become a professional tennis player or they want to really be involved in something else. My initial thinking was, oh, well, they need to go to a high school, get on the team, do this kind of thing. But really, they can do their classes online. This can replace homeschooling or supplement homeschooling, and then they will have more time to spend on their activities. The other reason that I want to look at online learning is it's becoming increasingly accepted. It's becoming increasingly popular. So if you look around in here, I would imagine that all of us have had at least an online class. So a 2011 survey from, it used to be the Sloan Consortium, it's now the Babson Institute, but that shows that out of just surveying 3,000 colleges, over 6.1 million students have taken at least one online course. So this is really growing. It's something that's here. It's something that we really need to understand, contend with. And while we're going through this kind of paradigm shift of how we learn, where we learn, we need to keep in mind that we need to make sure that our courses are of quality, effectiveness, that they're accepted. So there's increased requirements and scrutiny of online programs as we see some of the things out there kind of tarnishing the image or raising doubt about the effectiveness or the quality of an online course. So there's one of the studies that I've cited is a SACS review or SACS rules change that came in 2011, and so they're putting additional scrutiny on figuring out the identification and authentication of the student. So if I'm an online learner and I never come to campus, how does the school ensure I am who I say I am? And so there's things like just using secure servers, using email. So we also have the existing regulations from FERPA to make sure that student identity is protected. So you have to use systems that are controllable by the institution. So that's also looking at the privacy of the student, so you don't post the student's grades out on the public web, these kind of things. Another thing that they're looking at is defining credit hours. So it's pretty easy to determine, hey, I have a 3-credit course. We're going to be in the class for 45 hours of the semester, and we're going to expect the student to spend 90 hours of the semester preparing, doing homework. Well, SACS is really taking a look at, are they still getting that same 135 hours in an online course? How do you define seat time if it's an asynchronous versus a synchronous course? So that's one of those things that as instructors we'll have to take a look at as SACS and other accrediting bodies put more focus on determining seat time and credit hours. Another thing is regulation agencies are differentiating between correspondence courses or distance education or off-campus. So there was a pretty famous case of a private school. It was a private religion-based school. It's St. Mary's of the Woods in Indiana. They lost, I think, $42 million in funding from the federal government, and now they're not eligible for government because they claim that their students were taking distance education courses where you're online, you're using technology. But what they were really doing is they were doing correspondence courses. And if more than 50% of their students are enrolled in correspondence courses, they're not eligible for Title IV funding. So they're on probation. They lost a lot of money. They had to repay the government. And because of this study and a few other ones like that, a lot of these accrediting agencies are taking a look at differentiating these. And the off-campus site, that one is, so it's not an official campus, but it may be a place where students go and learning is delivered to them through whatever method. Usually there'll be some sort of high-speed video link or something. So the one that they really had a problem with in that article is the correspondence course when they were calling it distance learning. So the last little bit here, this is kind of a modified ADDIE kind of model here. So one thing that I read that people frequently complain about ADDIE was that it didn't include planning sufficiently. So it had the analysis at the beginning, but we really needed to put more planning in ahead of time. To do online teaching properly, it really takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of resources, which include time, money, to pay the faculty member. And those are things that administration going down saying, hey, you've been teaching this course face to face for the last 5 years. We want an online section this summer, and it's May, so go ahead and get that ready, right? So for it to be effective, to follow best practices, really takes time to implement those changes. But when you're doing online teaching, you're still following the same pedagogical practices. The stuff that works in classroom, there's a lot of that can work online. There's going to be some things that you may do differently. You can't just capture your lecture and broadcast it right out there to your online class and go, bam, my class is online. That doesn't work quite as well. So you have to follow these. My next two slides will give us some of the best practices, but you need to make your content designed for that online class. So maybe chunk information, smaller segments, not have stuff so redundant. So if you're asking a student to read a chapter and then you're just handing them the PowerPoint for that chapter, that's not really the most effective method. Then you build the course and implement it. You inform the learners of the expectations. You monitor and revise. So this is kind of a cyclical thing because even after you follow all these steps, you're not done. The course is kind of a living document. It's kind of a living thing. So you're always revising, you're always monitoring, you're always looking for problems, looking for things to update. So it's really an ongoing process. And so I'll have a list of a lot of best practice recommendations in this slide and the next slide. And really what this comes from is kind of a cursory look of a couple of different papers that are quantitative, qualitative, Delphi studies. I've kind of went through and gathered the majority of the items that I saw recommended in several different papers. So, and then I just ranked them alphabetically because I started ranking one that I thought was higher and this person thought was higher. So I said, well, let me just do these alphabetical and kind of explain them. So the objectives should be achievable to learners. So learners, there's a prior misconception in some research that, hey, if you make your classes easier, learners will be happier and they'll be more likely to be engaged. There's a lot of contradictory research that says learners don't want a course to be just simply easy. They want it to be complex, challenging, but still achievable. you should be active in the course as the student and as the instructor. You need to show that you care. So we'll come back to that and some of these other ones. And the challenging aspect here, again, like I said, the easy course doesn't make a good course. But if it's so challenging that it's impossible and not achievable, that doesn't make a good course either. Set clear expectations at the beginning of what you expect students to do, what the students should be able to learn, communication policies. Everything should be set clearly in the beginning so that learners know what to expect. Be encouraging to your students. So I believe it was Fiora that was talking about giving personalized feedback and saying that you can do it, and even our keynote today, at the end of her speech, she was encouraging to us all, right? Provide collaboration opportunities. So a lot of mixed research on this, but the one that I was looking at that I said, yes, I think this is valid, is that there was a study from University, Maryland College, University, whatever, that have a crazy name, but one of the recommendations that they were making was to create different collaboration opportunities, to have some groups let the students select, some groups that the instructor selects, small groups, large groups, try different things to see that works for different learners. Stay engaged, stay enthusiastic. This feedback item, so ask for feedback, so give feedback to the students that's personalized, that's meaningful, that's timely, and also feedback from students. So don't be afraid to ask your students, how's the course going for you? How are you following along in the course? So in one of those studies, they said this is probably good to do about week 3 to start asking for some feedback. And if you're able to make some modifications to make the course engaging and useful for that student. Keep things flexible but with structure. So learners, again, they like complex and challenging tasks. It keeps them engaged, keeps them encouraged. But giving them too much flexibility can be a bad thing if there's no direction and there's no meaning, if they can't connect to the content or to the reason they're doing something. And this can be done through synchronous or asynchronous or a combination. A lot of that will depend on how the course is initially set up and offered. And again, personalized feedback, personalized for the course, personalized learning experiences, letting them use previous experience that they have. Going along with the clear expectations, keep grading requirements clear. The time feedback should be meaningful and individualized. If there are resources that the learner might need for the course, it's great to go ahead and let your learners know what those resources are, how they can access those resources ahead of time. Sometimes a student will go through a course and this student may know all these tools that are available for him, or a tutoring center or whatever it is. And another student, they just never know, and they may not do as well because they weren't on the level playing field. They didn't have all those resources available to them. Be responsive, so students ask you questions, just respond to them. Build community within your courses, and that can be done through kind of informal learning, introduction kind of assignments, and just throughout doing your different groups. Again, follow your pedagogical principles, and if possible, but this is probably one of the things that aren't always possible depending on where you're teaching the course, but smaller class sizes are sometimes easier to manage and easier to build that community. All right, so I think that wraps that up. So again, these are probably pretty common sense things to you, but this is just kind of a recommendation. You don't have to implement every single one of them, but these are good kind of best practice recommendations. So that'll wrap that up. If you have any questions, let me know. I think I'm right on time.
Okay. Any questions? We have time for one.
What do you find, as a faculty member, but as an instructional designer brain, how are you finding faculty members who don't have those skills are responding to those best practices?
Yeah, I think that faculty members that don't have the training in this area, they're not following those. They're doing what comes intuitive to them, which, so they're probably hitting some of these items because, hey, this is what worked for me. But I think the areas we see faculty with the most challenge are faculty that have never taken an online course, never taught an online course, and then they're suddenly asked to, and they're struggling because they don't have the experience, they don't know, and they're doing these kind of, let me take the textbook stuff, post it up, post a PowerPoint. That's an online course.
And tell them to read.
Yeah, read this chapter and do a page 6. Right?
We're going to ask all 4 of our presenters from this group to